Good morning. This is Biniam. How are you all? Glad to see you all tuning in. This is the Checkin In podcast. I'm your host, Biniam. Today is Friday. Yay for Friday. Friday the 27th. Oh my goodness, almost the end of the month. Just a few days away. School is around the corner for many. It's that beginning of the year cycle that engages. And so here we find ourselves at the end of August on the Checkin In podcast. Hello to all my friends coming in on the TikTok live stream, YouTube live stream, and of course, Instagram as well. Glad to have you guys joining here on the Checkin In podcast. This is episode 41. And I'm a little bit later than usual, but that's okay. I think I like this later schedule because it might give more access to others who want to be a part of the podcast on the live option. This is a podcast where we focus on three big things that I celebrate and love talking a lot about. And that's in context of our evolution, developing ourselves into being the people we want to be. Those three things that I focus on are number one, growing in awareness of ourselves and who we are and how we operate, how we see the world, why we are the way we are, some of the things that go into making us into who we are. These are some of the things that I love doing a deep dive on. Number two, in the process of getting to know myself, I've not always been known for being kind to myself. In fact, I've been anything but kind. I've been a lot more harsh on myself, thinking, how can I not be a better person? I beat myself down. And so on this podcast, number two, I want to commit to seeing how I can be gracious to myself, how I can be patient with myself, how I can give myself the benefit of the doubt and what that looks like. And so that's an important investment for me. So number one, awareness. Number two, kindness. And number three is happiness. We want to pursue greater expressions and experiences of happiness in real, tangible ways. And how we do that is by processing all the in-between emotions that are really difficult. So that's what I want to focus on the Checkin In podcast. Welcome to episode 41. So glad you're with me. Usually I select a question of the day, which is a self-reflective question. Today's question is actually an interesting one. Interesting in that I've never actually shared this answer before, and it's taken me quite some time to even come to this nucleus of what my answer is. But the question we're answering today is, who has disappointed you the most? And how did they disappoint you? Now, this could turn into an argue fest, or not an argue fest, but like an unload fest where you just want to say, hey, this person and this person and this person have done me wrong and that kind of thing. But I'm going a little more specifically here. Who has disappointed you the most? And I'm looking for not a whole wardrobe of people who have disappointed you, but who are the ones that you really invested in such a way, and yet in the aftermath, you really are feeling the lack in what they have left behind. So that's the question. It sounds like a heavy question, but let's dive into why I'm considering this question. Usually at the outset, I like to look at the question and say, why is this a good question even in the first place to ask? What is it about this question that is helpful for us to even engage in our reflections on? So as I look at this question steers us into that territory where it isn't always fun to be. It isn't always fun to be. Hello, how are you? Nice to see you guys coming in. I see you all, by the way. When you see me wave like this, it means I'm acknowledging one of you guys are coming in. So the ones who are saying hello at least. Yes, so this question here, who is disappointed the most and how did they disappoint you, steers us into territory where we're reflecting on some sad happenings in our experience. It's like, that wasn't fun. This was a sad time for me. This was an impacting time. I'm looking for those moments and those individuals who you really you invested a lot by way of saying, I trusted this person, I gave myself up in vulnerability to this person, and here's how they turned out other than the one I was expecting. It moves us into that sad zone. And this is not a bad thing. I think for most of us, we try to avoid these areas that bring us into this context of sadness. I have officiated over many funerals in my time, and in the midst of officiating through these funerals, one of the things I've seen is how there's an aversion. There's an intentional trying to avoid the context of expressing emotion, especially when it's a sad emotion that entails in vulnerable expressions like crying, like wailing, like saying, "Oh, this is really, really unhappy for me. This is not a fun experience to go through." And so, one of the things I've seen culturally in my time here in the Western world is this aversion of going through these emotions and thinking and processing them. And I want to discourage that. I want to discourage that from my perspective because I think it's a healthy thing to express what's going on under the radar. When we're experiencing these things, when we are in these zones, I think it's a really important thing for us to express them in appropriate ways because when we do so, it clears up some space that needs to be cleared up. If we don't attend to these emotions, what tends to happen? Let me give you an analogy. It's like sweeping dust at your house under the carpet because you don't want to bother picking it up and throwing it in the garbage and hoping that no one sees. So things look like they're all good, and yet under the radar, there is accumulating dust. And in time, that amount of dust that you're sweeping out of the carpet grows to be so tremendous that even the carpet can't contain it. And then eventually, it all just comes out. In the same way as how I perceive and understand emotions, when we are given opportunities to express those uncomfortable emotions in our experiences going through life, if we neglect expressing them, if we sort of sweep it under the carpet, what tends to happen is eventually it just poof, it blows up beyond our control, and then we sort of are left trying to pick up the pieces in the aftermath, and it's really an unhappy place. And so that's why I think it's really important for us to give space to going through these territories, these terrains that are marked with unhappy memories. And that's one of the questions we're considering. So one of the things we're considering in this question: who has disappointed you the most, and how did they disappoint you? This may bring up some really sad memories. This may bring up some really difficult emotions for you. And it may be a scary thing to face these emotions because you're like, I'm not sure I can handle what entails me going through these emotions. And so, hello, BC. This is my podcast. Yes, this is one of my podcasts. I've got a few podcasts. Remind me at the end, and I'll see if I can list a few of the other ones that I'm a part of as well. But this is the one I do it on a daily basis. It's got a big portion of my commitment right now. And so, welcome to it. I'm glad to have you. This is a big Checkin In podcast. But as we're reflecting on what this looks like for us in going through these emotions, it can also have a scary element because most of us have never actually really had practice with what does it look like for us to intentionally walk towards the thing that makes us feel uncomfortable. What does it look like for us to be open to expressing and saying, this happened. It was not cool. It was not a happy scenario, but I am really love your videos. It says, hey, you really do bring much needed light, love, and positivity to the world. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate the encouragement. That's the reason why I do these videos and these podcasts is because I want to inspire you guys from my experiences, from my example, in how I see and navigate through the world. So thank you for the love. I appreciate that. So I want to say, even as you face those scary things, I'm encouraging you to walk towards it. But for some of you, you're thinking, this is too scary for me to walk towards because this is actually, it intimidates me. It makes me feel like I'm not in control, and it makes me feel like I'm going to lose control. And that's a really scary place for a lot of people because they like to be contained. They like to make sure that they are the ones who are sort of adjudicating how far they go going forward in whatever experiences that they're going through. And so that can be a really scary thing. I'm encouraging you, would you consider walking towards it? And if you're scared to do it on your own, who is there in your life that can come alongside and be a really good support in the midst of real challenges, a real challenging opportunity? Who's there that can sit with you while you're processing it? Who's there that can hold your hand? Who's there that can encourage you as you're going through it? Because let me tell you, this takes tremendous guts. It takes significant courage to face this scary forecast, but it's worthwhile. And so that's what I see when I'm even considering this question: who is disappointing the most, and how do they disappoint you? Lots of love from South Africa. I got your love. Thank you. I so appreciate you. And then finally, as you consider processing these scary, uncomfortable emotions and memories, And as you've had the courage to step up to it and walk through it, I like how the question also asks us to be a little bit more specific. Not only who has disappointed you, but what were the things that went into them disappointing you? Those three things that I mentioned at the outset of my podcast for why this podcast exists are as follows. One, there's the awareness piece, then there's a kindness piece, and then finally there's the happiness piece. One, we want to grow aware of who we are and how we operate. And as we consider this question, we're asking, how do they disappoint us? What can we learn about ourselves? How can we become more aware of ourselves, of how we can be disappointed by others, and how we learn about ourselves so we can prepare ourselves not to be disappointed in significant ways, how to move forward while still giving space for other people to be humans and the way that they may disappoint us, and how are we going to respond while guarding our hearts. That's an important part of this, right? Secondly, how can we learn to be kind to ourselves, not beat ourselves saying, oh man, I never know how to make the right decisions or choose the right people. No, that's not really helpful. How can we learn to be kind and patient with ourselves in the midst of all this and saying, hey, I missed that one there, but how can I learn about myself and give myself space to be able to grow into what I'm hoping to experience? And then thirdly, how can I maximize my happiness by actually processing these emotions? When we think about these individuals, and if we haven't processed or given time to processing these memories and experiences, they continue to take up real estate in our hearts and our minds and push out any space that may be available for our happiness. And we want to get to happiness. We want to experience true happiness, authentic happiness. But to get there, we need to get through this stuff. So that's the opportunity we're presented in this question that we're considering today. Who has disappointed you, and how did they disappoint you? Getting love from all you guys. I have so much to be thankful for. Thank you for the encouragement, for the love that you guys are sending my way. I see it. I appreciate it. I love and appreciate your expressions. I'm really blessed to have you, even being part of this podcast for the short bit that we get together. So thank you. I appreciate that. I got your love. All right, let me dive into my answer for this question. Who of all the people in my 4+ decades would I say has disappointed me the most? And my answer may be one that's unexpected for you guys. The one individual that has disappointed me the most, and that's the question, is who is disappointed the most? Who's the top of the list? There's many people I could say, but the one I would say the most that has disappointed me is God. And I say God for a reason, because I was brought up in a Christian home. I bought into the faith. I bought into it in such a way whereby I said, this is meaningful for me, and I'm going to just dive in with both feet and invest myself in such a way whereby I'm going to try and flesh out and experience all that my faith entails for me. And now here I am, 4 decades in. It took me 4 decades to get to this point where I'm saying the one individual who has disappointed me the most. I may get emotional in this, so if you see me start tearing up, please don't be alarmed. I don't think it's illegitimate to express emotion, and I want to normalize it, especially for guys, because for guys, we're not encouraged to express emotion. This is the first time I'm talking about this in public, and so that's why this is meaningful for me. God has been the one who's disappointed me the most, and I say that because I sold out my life to the cause of God and to trying to experience what I thought I should be expecting in my faith as a Christian. And now I am wondering if it was real or not. I'm not sure still. But I would say he's the one that's disappointed me the most, because as I bought into what the faith, as I understood it, taught me, I bought into the idea that I, as a person, could be transformed into something that looked really beautiful. And let me say, the faith that I was once a part of, and the Christian faith, has really impacted me in so many significant ways, in the way that I communicate with people, in the way I think about people, in the way I connect with people, in the way I place my values. And I've been influenced in some magnificent ways. But what I bought into is that the very heart of the faith is that you could receive a brand new heart, which is another way of saying you could have a brand new way of seeing the world, from the way you think to the way you feel to the way you operate to your values and convictions, and that God was going to take away all the crappy stuff that you're not really proud of, the expressions where you lie or where you steal, or all these things that we consider sins in the Bible, that God would be able to take away all those and give you a brand new heart that does not desire any of those. So I bought into that, and I worked so hard for decades to experience this kind of transformation. I did as much as I could in willing myself and praying and asking and longing for and really desiring this setting where I could experience freedom from all these things that I wasn't really proud of in my life. And at the end of it all, I think I eventually just threw up the white flag and said, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And so I give up. And that for me was a really sad thing, a really sad thing. And I think that's where a lot of my sadness is birthed. A lot of my sadness is birthed, especially when it comes to the element of me saying, okay, I bought into this and I wanted to experience this outcome, but I don't know if I experienced it. I don't know if I experienced it. And it wasn't for lack of trying. So the one individual who has disappointed me the most, I would say, is God. Because I really bought into the option that I could be totally transformed. That was the the offer, is that you could completely be transformed from the inside out. And that's what I really banked on. And so looking back now, it's with tremendous sadness that I'm like, oh, that's what I was hoping for. I'm hearing here that I'm a Christian, and it seems we've been told different perspectives on religion. I guess there are um, there's different schools of thought, even in the Christian faith, to be certain. There's, in my understanding, like two sort of divergences. There's the liberal side, which is a lot more easygoing about their interpretation of the Bible and what God's expectations are. And then there's a conservative side, which is a lot more like, no, this is what the Bible says, and we're going to stick with this, and we're going to lock ourselves into this, regardless of cultural norms and pressures. And so, yeah, there are a few different schools. I mean, I went through my undergrads, I went into my grad studies, studying religion as well. So I feel I have a really good lay of the land as far as the faith is concerned. But at the heart of it, there was a time when I left my community where I was struggling with thoughts of me being a failure and saying, I guess I wasn't cut out for it, especially even in my role as a leader in the church. I was actually a pastor, for those of you who do not know that. I was a pastor. I had devoted my life to it. I love teaching. I love leading. I love counseling. I really enjoy connecting with people and helping them make their own headway in their own experience of the faith. But now on this side here, I'm just kind of sitting here and wondering what it was that I was missing, because it wasn't, again, like I say, for lack of trying. I'm one of the hardest people that I know. Sorry, one of the hardest working people I know. And I worked super hard to try and experience and work myself into this lifestyle whereby I could experience this transformation that was promised. And so basically, Redskins, the context of my teaching was that God would come and totally transform you and help you to become something brand new. And that's because of what Jesus did for you and accomplished for you. And I think eventually why I walked away was out of disillusionment, because I was thinking, I've tried and I keep on still breaking the commandments that I'm not supposed to be doing. And I just don't want to pretend anymore. I don't want to pretend like I'm something that I'm not. And so I made my exodus. I left the church just because I couldn't hold the line in what was expected from me. And I wanted to be honest about it. I didn't want to pretend like, hey, I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing when I'm really not doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing. That made me really sad when I left. It made me really sad because it's almost like I threw up the white flag and said, I can't do it. I've tried. It doesn't seem practical for me. And so that was the context in which I left the church and my faith. There was definitely strong pangs of guilt that I couldn't cut it and do what I'm supposed to be doing. And even to this day, there are expressions of um, not guilt, but shame that I couldn't. I'm reading here. What I've known is that everyone makes mistakes and does wrongs and will continue to do so. But if I'll wait till you finish that thought there. It made me really sad when I left the church because I thought I'd really banked on an ideal that could be that I could see that this investment wasn't for nothing. And now looking back, I'm like, I should have just maybe had my fun and done all the things. But I didn't. But I didn't. This isn't an unusual answer to this question. Again, the question for those of you coming in that we're answering today is who was disappointed you the most? And how did they disappoint you? I haven't really gotten into the how part yet. For me, this is impacting because, like I said, I gave my life to this. But if you believe in Jesus saving you on the cross, you will be forgiven and saved after death. Yes, that's so true. That's the heart of the gospel, Redskins. And yet it goes a little further in my understanding. And that is once you trust, then the body is the temple of God, says my friend Vinny. No building can come close. Got it. Yeah, that's again a really core teaching there to be certain. I'm so sorry you've had a bad experience with the religion. It wasn't necessarily bad. I think it was just I don't feel like I can cut it. I worked really hard. Beautiful people in the faith. And then let me say there's amazing people there. And there are people who inspire me. And I'm like, I wish I could be like that, but I just can't relate. So there's a lot of good people. And then there's also a lot of people, I would say, my friends here, who are in the faith, but they don't feel safe enough to express their real questions that they have. They don't feel safe enough to be able to say, I don't get this, or I disagree with this, or whatever expression looks like coming across. And so I wonder if there isn't a context in which in the church there could be facilitation of healthy, honest conversations that really enable people to express their questions, their misgivings, their worries, their fears. These are some things that I don't think I've seen being presented in as an opportunity for others to be able to engage on. That's something that I wonder, what could that look like if it were available? That's something that I long for and I hope happens, but in the absence of it happening, I think there'll be more like me who continue to sort of just go through the motions but aren't there because they really believe or feel that this is necessary for them. And I like being a hell yes to whatever I'm doing. I like being a hell yes to the ideas that I'm signing up for. And I think that's a big reason for why I'm not there. How did God disappoint me? I think God disappointed me because that thing that I was striving for decades, I never actually experienced. And that was a transformation, that complete transformation, not to be a perfect human being, but the things that I struggle with the most and I couldn't give up on. That's the part that I'm like, I wish that could have been sorted out. And so I felt like such a failure. I felt like such a bad person because I couldn't figure this out, right? I don't think that's a cop out to say that this is my answer. I could definitely have said some people or individuals, and even then I could have been nuanced in the way that they had disappointed me too. I remember for the longest time when I was in my younger years, I was looking for people I could trust, men that I could trust, who I could ask questions of, who I could try to process the confusing elements of life, because life can be confusing, right? I never did find those individuals. Sorry, I never, for years, especially in the critical time when I needed them, I did not know where to find them. Thankful now that I am in a season where I can be that for others, but I will say there was a tremendous cost to me when I wasn't able to be able to have that resource of someone else who could say, hey, I got you. This is not scary. Let me hold your hand and walk you through this process here. This is the first time that I'm talking about this in public. The sadness that I feel like God has let me down. In the faith, they believe that God will never leave you. He'll never let you go. He's always going to be there for you. I hope I experienced that at some point, but I haven't, and that's why I left the faith. I left the faith for that reason, and as a result, I've experienced a lot more independence in my thinking. I've experienced a lot more confidence in trying to figure out what I feel is right and which direction in life I want to go and how I want to engage. And so, for that, I'm really thankful. I'm thankful for the way that faith has also influenced me as a person. I think I'm a better person because I grew up as a Christian. But it was that invitation to give everything. You know what it's like when you meet someone that you really value and you appreciate, whether it's in a romantic context or in a platonic context, when you say, you seem like such a trustworthy person. I want to give you my whole heart because I think you're trustworthy. That's in essence what I did with my faith. And then the resulting feeling after decades of trying and trying and trying is that feeling that perhaps a lover gets when they said, I gave you everything and you didn't pull through and guard what I gave you. And so that's a significant part, I feel, of how I've navigated what I've gone through in my experience in the faith and why I'm coming out of it now saying, I'm not sure if I could ever do that again. In such a complete and whole way say to someone, here's my whole heart and I'm giving it to you because I trust you. Now, I wouldn't do this with any human being because I understand first and foremost that all of us in our equality are messy human beings. And at some point, we may let each other down. And so I want to give this space and distance to those I'm connecting with. So when they do let me down, I'm almost anticipating and expecting and saying, oh, I knew that it happened along the way sometime. No problem. Let's pick back up and try again, kind of thing. So that really guards me currently. But when it comes to like my faith in the deity that I feel has let me down, I mean, I gave everything, I believe. And I found in the aftermath that it really didn't help me personally. So there's an awareness piece here that I'm reflecting on that enables me to say, this did happen. It's impacted me to be the person I am. I'm finally able to speak my truth and say, I don't know if I believe in all the precepts of the faith. But now I feel freer to go and express myself, to communicate what values I have, to be able to try and understand the world from a different perspective. This has enabled me also to express kindness to myself, saying, I'm not a terrible person for leaving the faith. I'm not a lost cause. I haven't lost my value. And so I really appreciate that. That's really encouraging for me. It's really helpful for me. So going forward now, it's just a means of me saying, how can I care for me in the way that I need to, in the way I know myself needing care? How can I extend graciousness to myself in that zone whereby it can be along the lines of, hey, this is not bad, you know? And then the happiness piece, I finally feel like I can be honest with my world, with myself, and all those I'm interacting with, including you guys. And this maximizes my happiness because no longer am I worrying about saying, I hope they never find out the real Biniam because then I'm done for. I've been able to say to the whole world, here's who I am, here's how I believe, here's what I value, etc., etc. And this has really enabled me to walk into this space where now I feel free to be able to express and say, I value this is what I want in life. And so that's really important for me. My dear friends, who is that individual for you that has contributed towards disillusionment? Who's that person that has disappointed you, who you thought would never disappoint you? Who's that individual to whom you've given everything and you're like, that was a bad move. In the aftermath, you're still picking up the pieces. Thank you for the love I'm receiving on the live chats. I I appreciate you guys immensely. There is an intentional reason why I'm making time on my day. Here's me coming back from a whole morning. I woke up at 3 o'clock this morning as I was driving my Uber, but I came back for this podcast because this is an important investment for me. I want to share myself with you guys in this way, whereby I can inspire and encourage you in your experience as you're going through life. And I want to do that from my own experiences, not to tell you here's what you should do or what you should believe or how you should think, but more so to be a catalyst encouraging you to ask questions and helping you to process things and helping you to be able to make sense of complexities and complications that come along the way. Life is tough, and it's even tougher if we are on our own. My dear friends, right now I'm putting together a community, a family of individuals who want to come together, who are intentional about their growth, who are intentional about growing to be a stronger version of themselves, who is able to look at the world from a place of confidence, to be able to look and interact with the world from a place of saying, hey, this is how I value things, here's how you're going to meet me and interact with me. I had to learn my way through this. So let me encourage you to check out my website, biniamastris.com, and there you'll find membership tiers whereby you can kind of lock in at a place that you're saying, this is where I would love to be able to walk alongside you, Biniam, and where I'd love to have your input and your influence in my life so that I can become a strong version of me, a better version of me that is enabled to really take on the world from a place of strength and confidence and courage. That's where my investment is at. So if you can see yourself in that forecast, come and join me in my community. My friends, I'll be back on Monday. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Much love to you all. I will see you soon. Bye for now.